Welcome to Techie Vida with Dr. J, where life and technology intersect. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Techie Vida. Really happy to be here with y'all. Again, in our show, we don't just unpack tech news. We really translate this into life, culture, and self-discovery. I'm your host, Dr. J. Today's episode is extra special because it's inspired by something that got me really excited. Actually, it's been a minute since I last actually recorded, but I was really involved with EDUCAUSE Top 10 for 2026. It's been a year-long journey, one that I've been really involved and really putting a lot of attention to help shape tech trends that will influence higher education, tech strategy into the next year and for future years. And let me tell you, being in those conversations, hearing the collective wisdom and thinking deeply about the future of tech and learning, it reminded me of why I do this show. We weren't just talking about tools or cool features. We were talking about connections, empowerment, ethics, humanity, and how tech lives in real life, in classrooms, in workflows, and, really thinking about our students, how they think, how they learn, and how they grow. So today, I know that the top 10 happened a few weeks back, but I am going to spend some time going through those top 10 because I was, really involved and super excited to be there and what those priorities will be. I will cover why this matters. It's not for institutions, but also for all of us. Go through some big tech news for the week and then provide an aha moment that will be helpful for all. So again, grab your favorite drink, take a deep breath, and let's dive in. So as y'all are aware, I am really, as a researcher, really involved in trying to bridge tech and life and put it into action. I've been really dedicated and committed to this whole EDUCAUSE Top 10. I remember a while back going to a conference and trying to understand how things are influenced. And when it came to EDUCAUSE, I really wanted to understand more, get involved more, and really provide some direction. And the reason I really wanted to do this, it really came back to the fact that we're shaping tomorrow. And, it's really influencing how educational, whether it's K through 12 or higher ed, are really shaping and planning for their future. So if y'all haven't had a chance to read about the EDUCAUSE Top 10 and how influential it is, I will go over it. The first in the list, or number one, that was, something that's always important, was really that collaborative cybersecurity. It was more focused on teamwork to keep the digital world safe. We know we live in an era where there's a lot of cybersecurity threats, and making sure that it's not just an IT problem, but it's really shaped and it's a shared human issue, teaching people to think, thinking like defenders, not just users, is a high priority. Understanding that we live in a digital world and we want to make sure that all of our constituents are safe. And you don't have to go far. If you've ever texted something you shouldn't and immediately wish you could take it back, that's that could be a version of a digital exposure. Cybersecurity is like saying, let's all hold hands and make sure nobody accidentally trips over their own data. It's a boundary we all need in life. And quite frankly, for those of us that are not invested or involved, it's, one of the fields that doesn't get a lot of gratitude, but we need it to make sure that we're safe. The second item, which I really did a lot of research into, was the human edge of AI. This one is so good. It's not just about AI or tech in of itself. It's about really empowering real humans, students, teachers, staff to use AI critically, creatively, and safely. You might really think about in this component of AI doing your laundry, metaphorically speaking, but it can replace your judgment, your creativity, curiosity, or values, right? That's the human element when it comes to AI and putting that human element into play for artificial intelligence. The third one in the list was tied to data analytics. This could be for operations and financial insights. This is about using data not just to look cool, for lack of a better word, but to make smarter decisions. And this could be decisions around enrollment, budgets, and strategy. And, data analytics for those of us that work in the tech field or that support a lot of constituents and mass, it's really important to have analytics in play. It helps make our life much easier. It helps provide those level of insights. It's really like balancing your bank account instead of randomly guessing something or how much you have left in your account. It's really thinking about the data element that lets you plan with intention instead of hope. The fourth one, which I actually had a lot of favoritism or bias towards, was building a data centric culture. And we often throw off the term AI and data and garbage in, garbage out tied to data. But for me, this one was really big. It moves beyond tools. It's about making data a shared language across institutions so everyone can really act from evidence, not instinct. And it's really thinking about the data behind it, giving us the ability to make decisions, not necessarily easier, but really have a bigger or more clear, decision or thought process that will help us when it comes to making an approach. Data centric culture is also being mindful that we need to have the proper hygiene, the proper structure and elements to ensure that what we're working through and supporting, is really clean per se. And the reason we all know data and the importance tied to data feeds everything. It's what really creates a lot of the technologies that we have today. And, having or building a data centric culture helps us ensure that we have the proper hygiene, making sure that, again, we don't have or we're throwing in bad data, or otherwise we're going to have the whole concept of garbage in, garbage out. So that was a big one for me, building a data centric culture. Analytics, I worked in higher ed. I supported students. Analytics for number 3 was a huge thing that we leveraged a lot. And number 5, I took it a little bit different. Number 5 was knowledge management per se for AI. To me, the keyword here was knowledge management. It's not just using AI, but making sure that it's, the source elements of it have the proper knowledge, or it's being fed good knowledge to provide accurate, ethical, and useful information when we're constructing what we say a safer AI. I know there's a lot of opinions, but AI in of itself does have to have some level of guardrails to ensure that, it's providing the right information and advice. Again, it's really thinking about it from that lens and going back to making sure that, whatever we're fitting or building around the AI was built around the knowledge or the knowledge management that we had in place. Number 6 is really, this one was one of the big ones, and it's because it hits home. My work in the tech industry, and it's really measured approaches to new technologies. There's a lot of shiny items out there, a lot of shiny toys tied to technology that folks always focus on. And not every shiny tool is worth adopting. And that's one of the lessons that I first learned, when I was doing my research for my doctorate. It was something that I put a lot of focus on. Often a lot of folks are reactive to want to get something. And this could be really the concept of FOMO, or the fear of missing out. And I fall for it. I always want the latest phone, those powerful applications. But sometimes we don't really need to. Restraining ourselves can be a big win. Not everything new deserves a place in our life. And for me, when I thought about measured approaches to new technologies, is really taking a step back for the priority, or helping our leaders prioritize what those technologies will be, and really thinking before we invest. For me, I really believe that as leaders, or as thought leaders, as strategists, is really taking a step back and looking at the big picture, not being reactive to something that we see in front of us, but really thinking about the big picture and really thinking about what we're going to invest into, because any investment takes a lot of time and effort, but working through that. Again, number 7 was technology literacy for the future workforce. And, literacy is really the ability to ingest or digest what you're consuming and having that knowledge It's not just about having the tech, it's about understanding it and using it well. My whole educational career and my professional career, my success has really been tied around ensuring that the folks that I work with understand it and use the technology well to be successful. That's the literacy component. And the future workforce is really investing for me in, if you're working higher ed, is investing in those students that you have, making sure that you're giving them the proper tools and letting them really, build upon it, grow upon it, and giving them the resources to be successful. This will help them out. Knowing how to use tech will always make everyone a better driver and not necessarily the passenger. And that's one thing that, as I unpack artificial intelligence, as I think about my daughter, and as I have these conversations with my wife, it's really thinking about how do we build literacy around technology, to ensure that we're properly using the technology in front of us and, making the best. And I shared not long ago, we're always learning. And, my wife teaches me a lot of things that I'm not familiar with. And that's the beauty, like having or spending some time to really wrap my head around and then using what I learned to make my life much more productive and easier. Number 8 was considered from reactive to proactive. And that's something that a lot of us aspire to be, is proactive. Instead of, again, fixing problems after they erupt, it's really helping institutions or business learn to anticipate, model, forecast, and predict. And that's where the data component comes in, right? We talked about analytics, there's predictive analytics, and there's a lot of wraparounds that could help us be proactive. Unfortunately, this one to me sounds much more easier said than done. It's really difficult, especially when you work in an ecosystem that's really hard to be proactive. You could be preventative, and try to be that, but often there's some fields that are reactive in nature. And we could talk about, companies like Amazon or those big 10 that invest a lot of money in, trying their best to be proactive, but often they might encounter issues. And these are big multi-billion dollar companies that do encounter issues, and they have to ensure that they are reactive to that, but they plan, right? Nonetheless, it's being mindful and forecasting or anticipating potential issues. Having controls, alerts in place is fundamental in this component. Number 9 was the AI-enabled efficiencies and growth. Using AI not just to automate, but really thinking about it to streamline operations and help people focus on the meaning, not the grunt work, or, really spending a lot of time on that front. Now, this part is really interesting. We've been having a lot of conversations tied to AI and the whole culture or fear about whether AI will, take over certain jobs. The reality is that AI will, step in and cover certain items, just like the internet did. And it's a matter of how do we ensure that our, partners, that our customers, that our constituents, that our community is versed, and going back to the other one, is the driver in this element. And again, building AI enabled efficiencies that would help us, be more efficient and productive. The way I always think about this is, I don't like to really do anything with like my bills. So I do leverage technology, and I use AI to help handle a lot of those processes so that I could really focus on other things. And, it's really made my life personally a lot better. And again, I am always learning or trying my best to learn and use technology wisely on that front. So the literacy component is critical here. Number 10 is the decision maker data skills and literacy. This is not, for me, it's not leaving the last for the best. I actually think that decision makers should be really well versed with data skills and literacy, because they are the decision makers. And these leaders should be able to interpret the data to make decisions, not just collect the data and present it. One thing that I've often experienced and observed is there's a lot of gaps. And, as human beings, as leaders, we often have gaps. But being mindful of that and understanding that decision making has to happen with evidence, and evidence often comes from understanding data and having the literacy to not only wrap around data, but also the technologies in AI. And those are the 10. If I was to look through all the 10, I kind of, told y'all that there are some that I actually had more favoritism towards. And because of my current nature of work, it was really number 6. That one, again, new technologies that are coming in. And then the other part was the data centric culture. I've always been a big fan of data, driven by data and making sure that we use data for this stuff. Now, with that, I am going to transition. But again, being involved in EDUCAUSE Top 10 for 2026 really helped me from a human element, being connected and really thinking about technology and how it supports people and not replaces them, while at the same time thinking about, a big theme, which was really thinking about the collective will and the collective effort of coming together and working on problem solving these different items. So with that said, I am, really happy, but I am going to transition into something that I do want to talk about, which was a big update that came for Person of the Year. Interestingly enough, the Time magazine named the architects of AI. And I, as a big tech person, I wanted to take a step back and talk briefly, unpack this. It's, for those of you that are not familiar, it's not a single person. It's folks that are really breaking through or doing AI breakthroughs. And I was looking at this, and, there were a lot of powerful folks in that. And for some folks, it's significant. It recognizes that AI is not a mystical force. It's something that's here, and it's created by people with values, biases, creativity, mistakes, and dreams. And, as I was looking through that, looking at AI as a tool, thinking about the human user is the meaning or the maker in all of this. But really, these are the folks that are behind the innovation. And, we need to be also involved with what they're building and wrapping around and putting our thoughts, because there's a lot of misinformation going on out there. There's a lot of these folks that are using their tools to influence a lot that's happening. And it goes back to thinking about EDUCAUSE and the human edge of AI. In this case, these folks are, really influencing geopolitics, local politics. They are really invested and involved in all that's happening. And for us, it's just being really mindful about that and being involved to ensure that, we are creating that safe element of it, as, EDUCAUSE had covered on it. Another one that, I was like reading a lot into was really Oracle. And they've had some difficulties recently, and it's not, nothing associated to technology, but from what I was reading, it was really tied to the expectations that were set high. And it's interesting. It goes back to like technology, and the concept of, what is that point where, or that measurement tied to that. It's the framing behind it for me was really a human problem. There were high expectations, but not really their technology, even though I do have, or I hold my reservations on that front. But, there's a lot of folks that always think that things are going to go higher than expected, and we don't have to go far. Oracle to the side, cryptocurrency, it's not stable. People keep investing. And, I always find it interesting that we're now in an era where folks, have these expectations and are trying to get rich quickly, which is, again, to each their own. But I, want to make sure that folks do their research and are not easily influenced by a lot of these things. And, another one that happened, and, I was speaking with a couple of friends, was really the cyber alerts. We talked about EDUCAUSE and cybersecurity, and, there was something that Apple alerted users tied to cyber threats. And, as again, talking about EDUCAUSE, cybersecurity is not just about firewalls. It's really about human awareness, teaching people to recognize risk and protect themselves. Cybersecurity or security in general, it isn't a future. It's really a lifestyle, and it connects deeply to what we were talking about during EDUCAUSE and, that collaborative security effort. And the last one that I, took some time to unpack was uh, the what's going on in the chip industry and really the chip tracking tech companies and the global tensions. We all know that we're living in an era where there's a lot of tension, a lot of friction, and reminding us that tech isn't just products, it is geopolitics. And that's something that we need to wrap our minds around and also monitor to understand how it could influence us. Again, technology is not just tools, it really is power, access, and connection. And knowing who controls what tells you a lot about who influences the future. And that's why I made the comment about Time Magazine and these different folks. Now, bringing this all in and being part of Tequi Vida, I come to y'all really trying to bring y'all some real life experiences and share with y'all what I thought to be important as I look into all the items happening in tech and life. And to me, it's really what all of this means to you. It's not just as a professional, but as a human being navigating life in a tech intense world. Number one, all in all, you do not need to fear tech. You need to understand it. Every institution, every leader, every innovator is now focusing on data, AI literacy. None of that says AI will replace humans. It says human who understand AI will flourish. I briefly covered EDUCAUSE and what we mean by tech literacy in the future workforce. The second item, it really is resilience is built through connections, not isolation. We talked cybersecurity, we talked the human age of AI, we talked data culture and collaboration. All these priorities reflect the same truth. We're stronger together than apart. Humans are not silos. Tech ecosystems are social systems. Connection is not optional. And I say this openly as a person that, has to ensure, and, I am more on the extroverted side, but I also want folks to understand how critical it is to build that connection and to have that collective will to come together and work through it. And, number three, it's your life is a data story. We all have a phone, we all have a device, we all have a bank account, or I would think. But again, if it's your finances, your health, your productivity, even some folks' relationships, you're always generating data every day, and that's creating a story. The question isn't whether you're tracked, it's whether you're in control of the narrative. Again, the deeper meaning in all of this is really thinking about data analytics, literacy, understanding what you're doing and how you're doing it, and thinking twice before you post something or do something, because once it's out there in the digital world, it's going to be in the digital world. With that said, I do want to thank you all for joining me on this journey. I wanted to be here with y'all to talk briefly about the EDUCAUSE Top 10, talk about what was in there from the classroom, the choices we make, where tech intersects with life. Just wanted to really thank you all. Stay curious, stay connected, and most of all, enjoy and try your best to live in this tech-driven world. Thanks, everyone.